Uh, I'd like to say good evening, everyone, and thank everyone for joining us tonight. Please allow me to say a few words in Arabic to welcome everyone, and then we can switch to English and start the session, inshallah. مساء الخير جميعا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. محدثتكم ساجدة الغيثية المسؤولة عن الإعلام والاتصال في إثراء، واليوم باسم فريق إثراء أحب أرحب فيكم في أولى أمسياتنا الاقتصادية الإلكترونية لهذا العام. طبعا لمن يحضر الأمسيات الاقتصادية لأول مرة، الأمسيات الاقتصادية هي مبادرة سنوية تنظمها إثراء، والأمسيات الاقتصادية هي عبارة عن سلسلة جلسات حوارية يتم تنظيمها بهدف تسليط الضوء على مجموعة من الموضوعات الاقتصادية، وأيضاً التأثير المستقبلي لمجموعة من القضايا على هذه الموضوعات الاقتصادية المطروحة. في كل أمسية نطرح موضوع ويشاركنا فيه مجموعة من المتحدثين من القطاعات ذات العلاقة، من الخبراء والمختصين والأكاديميين. طبعاً أمسيتنا اليوم راح تسلط الضوء على موضوع مهم جداً، وهو تأثير الأزمة الصحية اللي نعيشها اليوم، أزمة كوفيد-19، وأيضاً تغيرات المناخ على الاقتصاد في المرحلة القادمة. طبعاً أحب أرحب بدوري بمدير الجلسة الأستاذ خالد الحريبي، وأشكر المتحدثين بشكل خاص اللي راح يشاركون اليوم تجاربهم وتطلعاتهم وآرائهم، وأشكر أكيد اللي انضموا الحين وجالسين يستمعوا للأمسية، وأتمنى يكون فيه مشاركة فاعلة خلال الأمسية. أحب أنوه فقط بأنه نحن راح نستقبل الأسئلة كتابياً عن طريق Q&A، فإذا عندكم أي أسئلة واستفسارات نرحب فيها بكل تأكيد، ومدير الحوار راح يحاول قدر الإمكان بأنه هو يأخذ كل الأسئلة والاستفسارات هذه ويتم الإجابة عليها خلال الأمسية بإذن الله. So switching to English now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sajda Al-Ghaithi, and I'm responsible for media relations at ITRA. On behalf of Team ITRA, I'd like to welcome you all to our first Inside Stories webinar this year. So thank you for joining, and it's a pleasure to have you all with us today. Tonight, our session is entitled COVID-19 and Climate Change. Is it business as usual? So we will try to answer this question during the session. I'd like also to bring to your attention that we will be taking questions through the Q&A, so you can write your questions, and our moderator will try to accommodate and answer as much or as many as we can during the session itself. So thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy your evening, and I'll hand you over to Mr. Khalid Al-Haraibi.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time from your valuable schedule to be with us tonight to discuss something that is very exciting. And I'm very excited because we have one of the most competent and knowledgeable panels that I have had the pleasure of moderating for a while. And we look forward to a very fun and enriching evening, inshallah. Thank you, Sajda, for the great introduction, and also to Isra for organizing these inside stories that engage the audience in very important topics. And today's topics, the topic of climate change is also very important. And we hope that we will learn as much as possible from this expert panel, which consists of Ustadna Dr. Amar Al-Hinai, who's the director of the Sustainable Energy Research at Sultan Qaboos University. Dr. Amar is a very well-known and accomplished academician and an energy professional who chaired previously the Authority for Electricity Regulation, and he is involved in many projects that are related to energy. And not only that, I've had the pleasure of knowing him in the States, where he was a distinguished scholar and scientist. And we are very lucky in Oman to have someone with his stature and his contribution to science, knowledge, and especially energy. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Amar.
حياك الله أخي Khalid. Thank you so much for the introduction, and it's my pleasure to participate tonight in this event.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amar. And we're joined also by Dr. Threya Sariri, who's Assistant DG for Environment Conservation at the Ministry of Environment and Climate Affairs. Dr. Threya is also a graduate of the National Leadership Competitiveness Program, and she's been involved in so many national planning activities, Oman Vision 2040, Tanfeed program, and she represented the ministry in most of the future policy planning that is related to the environment, and personally supports a lot of environmental initiatives related to sustainability. And I'm very glad to have her with us on the panel today. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Threya.
Alaikum assalam. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Khalid, for this introduction. It's my pleasure really to be with you today and to give me this opportunity to join and discuss one of the most important issues globally, the climate change and the COVID-19.
Shukran, Doctora. It's a pleasure to have you. And we're also honored to have Ms. Saad Al-Harthi with us. Ms. Saad is the Executive Director of Environment Society of Oman, and the work of Environment Society of Oman speaks for itself. Their achievements since she got the Executive Director position a few years ago are very well known to everyone, and they have been able to create an ecosystem around one of the most active civil society organizations in Oman, from the government, from the public, from universities to schools. So we're very happy to have her here to shed light from the civil society perspective as well. Assalamu alaikum and good evening, Ustad Saad.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you, Khalid, for your very kind introduction. And thank you, Ithra, for organizing this event. I look forward to hearing from not only the panelists, but hopefully have a good discussion from the participants as well.
Shukran, thank you. And also honored to have Bashmuhandis Ayman Shikeli also with us, who is heading Renewable Energy at Petroleum Development Oman, the most important corporate nationally. And they have been working in so many projects that are related to renewable energy. And we are sure that they have a lot of things in store. So we're very happy to have you here with us, Bashmuhandis Ayman. And we are very lucky also because we know that he is very busy as he is participating in the National Collaborative Leadership Program by the Diwan of Royal Court out of thousands of participants. So congratulations on being in the program, and thank you for being with us, Bashmuhandis Ayman.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Mr. Khalid, for the introduction. And indeed, I'm looking forward, let's say, to participate in the event along with the experts and the attendees and the participants. Thank you.
Shukran, Bashmuhandis. And I'm glad to be joined by a fellow entrepreneur, Ms. Bashmuhandis Sarayan Al-Kalbani. She's been very active as an environmentalist, as an entrepreneur for the past decade. She is the co-founder and the executive director of Mazoon Environmental and Technological Services. And she is the winner of the Entrepreneur of the Year Award by Shell in, I think, 2010, 2011. So we're very lucky to have someone like you because SME's perspective is one of the most perspectives if we are going to diversify our economy and talk about opportunities as well. Ahla wa sahla, Bashmuhandis.
Alaikum Khalid. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to join everyone in this panel. I think it's going to be very interesting and exciting.
Thank you so much. And I think it would be a good place to start is to know the opinion of our audience. As we know, we are all going back to work, and for the past 3 months, we had this abrupt break to our routines and the way we do business. And as we go back to our offices, and the world is reportedly or supposedly is moving towards a click economy, and you will see us using this term over and over, which is the circular, lean, inclusive, and clean economy. Is it possible that we have learned the lesson over the past 2 to 3 months and we are going to conduct our business in a more sustainable way, or are we going back to business as usual? So if I could have the help of the host, we would like to ask you a question that will pop up on the screen. And if you can answer this question, what is your take on the new normal? You know, are we going to have a new normal now in our life? Are we going back to business as usual? Or are we going back to a new world that is more circular, lean, inclusive, and clean? Or are we going to see a mix of both? So if you could kindly choose your favorite answer. And I don't know if is it biased to ask the panelists to vote in as well? Kind of know your answer already. So let's give it a minute until everyone votes, and then whatever suits you, Ms. Reem, you can show the results.
We'll wait for a minute and then we'll stop.
Sure. I just tried to cheat the system and vote, but it told me that the host and panelists cannot vote. Thank you.
Okay, ending.
Yes. Oh, it's very interesting. So I can see that there is a nice optimistic a trend that is coming, that people think that we will not be going at business as usual. Only one of the audience thinks that. And there is even, almost 30% of the audience think that we are moving toward a circular, lean, inclusive, and clean economy. And but the overwhelming majority think that we will have a mix with both. So perhaps we will check now with our audience, with our panelists. Thank you very much for everyone who voted. We'll check now with our panelists, what do they think? And we will focus mainly, as we move into this mix, what kind of opportunities does this open to us as Omanis and residents here? And perhaps before talking about opportunities, it would be good that we are on the same page and to know what do we actually mean by climate change and its impact. So if I may perhaps ask Stada Suad and then Dr. Threya to enlighten us so that we're all on the same page in terms of definition.
Sure. Thank you, Khalid, for the introduction. So climate change is a term that's given to a phenomena which is taking place as a result of, it's a natural phenomena, but it's also taking place at an unprecedented rate due to various human activities. So things such as burning fossil fuels, various agriculture activities are causing the release of various greenhouse gases, specifically carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. And what these gases do is create a greenhouse effect, meaning that they trap heat, which then results in a warmer climate, which is how you get the term global warming. But the impacts are much more than just a warming climate. You have this climate change, which means that you are seeing more drastic, more frequent storm events. You're starting to see sea level rise. The impact is seen on ocean acidification.
Yes.
Acidity entering the oceans, which of course impacts coral reefs. So yeah, the impact is numerous, and I think I've answered the question. I don't want to speak too long.
No, this is very interesting because but this is something that we've discussed in preparation for this panel, and there was this report by World Economic Forum that was written by around summarizing the opinions of 750 experts like you who assessed future global risks. And it turns out that 5 out of the 4 main risks that we will face as human beings are related directly or indirectly to climate change. So it's very interesting that now that we have defined it, to look for ways on how we can mitigate it properly. And it'd be good also to thank you very much, Stada Saad. Dr. Threya?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Saad. If I will talk about climate change and the COVID-19, because both of them considered as a global crisis. COVID-19 is a global crisis that knows no border and has impacted billions of lives and has left no organizations or economy untouched. And the same happening with the climate change. The immense scale and diversity of challenges sound very familiar to those who have long time supported urgent action to avert climate change and rapid natural losses. The most important lesson we learned from the COVID-19, and the top one, is the high probability and the high impact risks must be acted up on a timely fashion, and no delay is, and the delay is costly. And the good thing about the climate change, we know the costs of the climate change. So we have to move and to work in an accelerated way to tackle the climate change. The global natural disaster over the past decades caused by the climate change amounted to be around $3 trillion. And yet the climate change is continue to be insufficient. And that's why we should look at our efforts to rebuild the post-pandemic world economy through the lens of action on climate change. And in addition, the global losses from the climate change could total around 600 trillion US dollar by the end of this century. That's why the hit of the global economy because of the climate change will be worse and harder than the coronavirus. In addition, the World Economic Forum shows that the industries around the world, especially the highly or moderated industries, dependent on the nature generated more than of the half GDP, around $44 trillion coming from the natural resources. So that's why we have to move and take actions very quickly, and to transit to a greener economy, to preserve the environment and also to conserve the human health.
You're on mute, Mr. Khalid.
Thank you very much, Dr. Threya. I mean, we've seen now that there is a huge role for the human activity that's contributing to climate change, and we've seen also with Dr. Threya that there is a very urgent need to build, as she called it, post-pandemic economy. And I would like to get back to you guys later on, from your perspectives, your organizations, your sector. What could be done to contribute to this post-pandemic economy and opportunities. And it would be good now to also check with Dr. Amar. What are the steps that we can take and our audience can take? We saw now that the audience are very optimistic, and more than 70% think that there will be a mix of a totally new economy. How can we seize on this and we make it a blessing in disguise, really? Where are the opportunities?
Thank you, Khalid. Yes, I think, in fact, even before this pandemic, we have seen there is a move toward basically supporting solutions or coming up with mitigations for the climate change happening worldwide, of course, but Oman, of course, part of this world. And we have seen, first of all, Oman is part of several of United Nations agreement that has been signed and approved, starting all the way from the Rio de Janeiro agreement, and which was the first Earth, we call it Earth agreement at that time, and then after that, our protocol. And then after that, we have seen Kyoto also coming in the picture, and recently Paris. And all of in all of these protocols, Oman is just like taking also, I would say, initiative and planning, of course, as a policy for the country to reduce the impact of those greenhouse gases. The government has been also looking at alternative resources for fossil fuels. At the moment, we are almost close to 100% dependent on fossil fuels. We are generating all of the electricity needs based on fossil fuels. We produce most of the drinking water through desalination plants, again based on fossil fuels. And we have lots of the industries in different places, again also dependent on natural gas, even like oil and gas industry itself. Their processes also depend on fossil fuels. So there is highly dependence on fossil fuels, and that impacts, as probably Saad mentioned at the beginning, that all of these adds to the global warming, and mitigation has to be done. Recently, also we had seen sort of decisions started with looking as alternative resources from fossil fuels, and then. There are some plans, or there are some changes happening right now, at least in the electricity sector, where there is a plan now to come up with or to utilize renewable resources, which is more friendly to the environment. And there are, of course, a set of plan of deploying renewables to the grid to generate electricity, and of course lots of activities based on that electricity generation would help to reduce the impact. There are also other initiatives related to energy saving aspects, and again that will lead again to reduce the impact of those greenhouse gases. Now, how that would help, of course, all of this will lead to coming up with new economy, what we call it green economy. And that green economy, of course, will lead to first of all, new opportunities for different players, starting from SMEs, for example, when we talk about projects at the level of Saham, for example, similar project, or Yasir that has been announced also by Authority of Electricity Regulation. Again, lots of the user right now, or consumers, I would say, and again, I'm talking from electricity perspective, they are facing what we call it cost-reflective tariff that will force them to look for alternative ways to reduce their consumption, to reduce their electricity bills, and they are looking for any opportunities starting from deploying renewables or also mitigation to their, of course, demand by doing sort of energy management or retrofit call it buildings to reduce their demand. So again, the opportunity is there. There will be a change that will happen, and we're going to see it in the coming future.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amar. You mentioned really several important points, and it would be good that we remind also the audience of a couple of things. You mentioned diversification from fossil fuels. Could you remind us of the Sultanate's targets there? And also, it would be good to, you've mentioned that the opportunities that are this drive of the Sultanate to diversify away from dependence on fossil fuels will create for the SMEs and other companies. We are very lucky that today Tanfeed report 2019 was out, and it mentions clearly that our goals for the energy projects of Tanfeed are the highest in terms of achievement in comparison with other sectors. We've reached 85%. As far as you know, these projects that we are implementing now in the energy sector, did they take into account impact on climate change? So could you just remind us of these two things, targets and the current projects, whether they were planned with climate change in mind?
Yes, so the initial target that has been announced by the electricity sector is to achieve 10% of the total energy demand to be from renewable resources or from alternative resources by 2025. And then later on, we have seen another target that has been announced also by the Minister of Oil and Gas, which is the minister which is responsible now or supervising, or let's say in charge of the electricity and water sector. And His Excellency, the Minister announced would like to achieve 30% by 2030. So again, those targets right now, I think the different parties, I would say, in Oman right now, trying to achieve. Of course, the majority will be controlled, or I would say, supported by Oman Power and Water Procurement Company, OPWP, because it's the energy planner for the country. And we have seen announcement, well, in fact, of every project, 500 megawatt. That will be the first project, which is under construction right now, supposed to be commissioned by next year, or most likely by 2022. We have seen the announcement also for Manah project. It's going to be 1,000 megawatt of solar BP system also. And again, that project again will contribute, of course, to reduce again the impact to the climate change, as well as, of course, will be part of the energy mix. We have seen recently also BDO, and I think Engineer Ayman will talk more about it, but the Amin project, 100 megawatt, that has been commissioned successfully. There are other projects that has been announced also, and it was part of the Energy Lab at that time, which is the interconnection between the north and the south. Yeah, and that's overhead line 400 kV transmission system will be running all the way from Abri through BDO territory all the way until it reaches Duqm. It will allow basically, first of all, more energy interchange between MIS, main interconnected system, and BDO. It will improve and would help to optimize even the power system, share the spinning reserve. All of these will reduce the cost, will reduce the emission, and of course will end up with more stable and reliable network. Duqm is very important. As we know, first of all, the demand is expanding in Duqm area. Duqm also blessed with wind energy there. By the way, I forget maybe to mention the first wind project in the region is 50 megawatt wind project in Thamreit, which has been commissioned successfully last year. And it's right now producing, sometime reach more than 35 megawatt of energy that has been connected to the FAR power system. That region also is blessed with more wind projects that will be more viable once we have the interconnection between north and south, between MIS and the FAR system. Duqm, as I mentioned, there is wind potential there, and I think OPWP already announced at least potential to have wind project in Duqm area, in addition, of course, to the interconnection. Why do we need the interconnection? Because wind, of course, requires basically a strong grid connection to allow integration of wind resources. So the combination of wind and solar will also reduce the intermittency level. Yes. We know that BP will be available, or the solar system will be available during the daytime. And the good thing that winds, we have noticed that the wind profile in especially in the south and in Duqm area, it shows active wind during the night, which really complement basically like solar during the day, wind during the night, and that will have probably more or a nice profile that will make it easy to integrate to the electricity grid.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amar, for the great overview. And I think it will be good now also to see this is from the policy, and also from the government efforts, which seems to be, it will be really great if the public, knows more how, where these efforts reached, so that we are aware of how advanced we are, not only in the region, but also not only in the Gulf, but also in the region in terms of moving towards renewable and alternative energy. And it would be good also to know what the private sector and what the corporates are doing. I know for the past few years, companies like BDO have started really flagship projects in renewable energy. It would be good to take us whether they have reached a stage where they can be scaled up so that we can see more economic and social impact of these projects. And before that, I was just, before asking Bashmohandes Ayman to take us through the journey of PDO and renewable energy, we got a question from the audience that I would like people the esteemed guests to think about, from Mr. Abdullah Al-Shariqi, which is, he talks about on the policy level. So we've had a policy that aimed before COVID-19, that, how we've always had the goal of supporting low carbon and energy efficient technologies. Now that COVID-19 happened, is it going to be the same, or are there plans to have more incentives to encourage low carbon and energy efficient technologies? It'd be good to hear from everyone, and especially Dr. Thraya, since this is on the policy level, if there are any incentives planned to encourage these kind of technologies. And also, I think from the civil society perspective, it'd be good to know whether they think that climate change related policies that were before this current pandemic, will they be good enough for us post pandemic? So this is after we take the input from Bashmohandes Ayman والأستاذ ريان أيضا. تفضل باشمهندس.
Thank you, Mr. Khalid. It's always not easy to follow Dr. Amr. He covered many points, let's say, I wanted to mention. So I'll mainly focus on the, let's say, PDO perspective. Now, I see the opportunity here in Oman, if I can divide it really into an upstream, midstream, and downstream opportunities. And as well said by Dr. Amr, in the upstream opportunities, we are, let's say, we are blessed in Oman to have a very good potential, for the, let's say, renewable projects. And I do agree with the audience, that the post-COVID-19, we should have, let's say, mix of approaches, because I know that the country is already in a very good track, let's say. So talking about the renewable energy, the good thing that here now in Oman, alhamdulillah, we are actually, let's say, walking the talk, in the sense that we don't talk about the good potential, but rather what we are doing about it. And there are projects in place. As mentioned, last month, we have commissioned the first solar utility scale in Oman of 100 megawatt project. Lots of projects are coming in the funnel, specifically on PDO. Let's say we do have a target of 30% renewable mix by 2025, which is a stretch target. So we have like less than 5 years now to reach that target, but we know that it's doable. And it's an important element eventually, as I said, that we need to look at the investment point of view, and there is really a huge portfolio for investment, either in PDO, let's say, or in the government as overall. There is big focus, let's say, from PDO side when it comes to the wind energy as well. We have installed weather stations that we will put them for 1 year until we let's say, get the projects into realization, as well as, let's say, focusing on storage and hydrogen. Now, hydrogen is like an important commodity that people would think it's like the future fuel. In PDO, we are trying to pilot that. And in PDO and the country as well, with the 400 kV, let's say, interconnection, grid interconnection, that will enable, let's say, more renewable mix, cheaper power to be dispatched to the network, and so on. So that's from one side, and that's from the upstream side. If we talk about the midstream, one of the main focus area, which is very important, is the, let's say, the transportation. If we think about it, let's say in Oman, although the population is really small, yet, when it comes to the public transport, it's not utilized heavily. And which make us, let's say, as a population, maybe overall in the GCC, we are emitting so much per capita when it comes to the transportation. Everyone is using his car. So, and let's say there is a really major scope when it comes to the electric vehicles, which are not widely used. Now with the kind of the subsidies reduction in the fuel price, this is kind of an enabler for that. And I believe, let's say, that there will be a big scope there, although there is a point of debate when it comes to electric vehicles, which should come first. Should it be the infrastructure so that people will be motivated? I have charging stations all over, let's say, and I can charge my car at any time. Or let's say, should, from a business perspective, the business owner would wait for the cars to come, so then they will build the infrastructure. But regardless of that, I am kind of confident that with the time, we'll see more Teslas and more, let's say, electric vehicles on the road. Now, when it comes in the downstream, Dr. Amr covered that, from different perspectives. Now, if we think about the government, and to put numbers into perspective, the government pays almost annually 700 million riyal for energy subsidies, probably 500 million riyal of that in the electricity. And a good thing, let's say, from the Authority of Electricity Regulation came with the cost-reflective tariff, as mentioned by Dr. Amr back in 2017. That helped us, for example, in PDO, to get our projects to be feasible. We have built one of the largest, let's say, solar car parking in our headquarters. And we have seen the benefits. We have realized that. And now we're expanding that. So it was a 6 megawatt. Now we are aiming for a 10 megawatt. So that's kind of, I would say, a stick approach, but it's really important, let's say, for the boards to see the benefits out of it. And then we can really get the projects, let's say, viable and also approved and justified. Also, when we talk about the energy conservation in general, there is a really huge scope for small and medium enterprises. And what we have seen now, let's say, there are very good SMEs who can work as energy service companies like ESCOs, who can really provide affordable solution, and that can be used in the, let's say, in the domestic level or even in the commercial or industrial level. So, and we in PDO, let's say, we're trying to deploy as much as we can from these technologies, and we always focus on jobs creation, as we mentioned, provided that, let's say, we look into the environmental aspect. And one important point, or last point I will highlight in the remaining 1 minute for me, is there is also a major scope when it comes to the investment about the carbon trading, which is not so much mature, let's say, in the region. For us, for PDO, let's say, we got Amin project, the 100 megawatt, to be approved by the German authorities. So we approved that credit, and we are going to sell that credit in the German market. And that's really a huge scope, let's say, and that will allow PDO, OPWP, and all NAMA group, let's say, companies to really work it out and even justify more projects when it comes to the renewable sector. So I'll leave it there, and then we'll look into we'll add more details, let's say, later. Thanks.
And thank you very much, Bashman Ayman. I think you got everyone excited by talking about the development also on the investment side. And I think that's very important as well. And you mentioned also the big picture, and that this should be tied to the effort in reducing the carbon emissions in general. And that's very important. And you mentioned also a very important question about what comes first, the chicken or the egg. And I know that there were public-private, very preliminary initiatives to encourage sustainable mobility. And there were some of the oil marketing companies who started to have some e-charging stations in their gas stations. But like you rightly said, from a business perspective, it's always comes back to what incentive scheme that will attract people that will create traction, so that the sector will flourish. Thank you very much, Bashmuhandis. And I think now you mentioned ESCOs, environmental services companies. So how are ESCOs doing, Ustad Rayyan?
First of all, I will talk about, I'm not representing the small business. I'm an owner of a small business, but as well, my business is focusing on environmental consultancy and environmental pollution monitoring. So when we look into the climate change or the climate crisis, we're looking into two different things that we're talking about emissions to the environment, we're talking about air pollution, and we're talking about the greenhouse gases. They're connected, but we as a consultant, we measure them differently. We work with different organizations, with the industries or other type of businesses before the beginning of the business itself. So we start with an environmental impact assessment before the project starts, where we can forecast what are the possible emissions of the project itself before it is running. And from the beginning, before the start of the project itself, from the forecasting itself, we can advise on, are these emissions acceptable or not acceptable? And at that stage, this is the opportunity for the industry itself to make all the changes in the design itself in order to improve their emissions. And then when the project is there, we do the direct monitoring, we do the direct measurement of the operation itself into the environment, and we do something else which is called greenhouse gases calculations. To be honest, this is not something not very old here in Oman. We just started to do it recently in the past few years, where big organizations started to calculate what is their overall, we do it in an annual base. What is the overall greenhouse gases emissions? And here we look into different aspects. We look into the operation itself, the consumption of the raw material, consumption of fossil fuels, energy consumption. Is this energy coming from purchased electricity? Is it coming from renewable energy, or is it coming from burning fossil fuel? And as well, what are the carbon sinks over there? It's a little bit early to say what are the improvements in the past few years, because it only has been practiced for maybe 3 or 4 years, and only with bigger organizations, just to check how much greenhouse gases are emitted. But the problem that we always point fingers towards the industry itself, but a lot of problems are coming actually from the community itself. And we cannot forget that public, for example, transportation by itself. Here in Oman, we don't have public transportation. We're all using cars with their all, and as my colleagues mentioned, that petrol prices compared to other countries are cheaper. Are we doing any, is there any studies here in Oman about the effect of the traffic itself into the impact into the air pollution in general in Oman, or the greenhouse gases in general? This is something, an interesting topic to be studied in the near future.
Thank you very much. You've mentioned really very important points, and I really hope that you know, the changes and the realizations of COVID-19 will increase and will keep you very busy over the next few years, and also will open opportunities to other medium-sized companies. And you've mentioned also a very important point about, yes, we have public transportation, but are we making the most out of it, and are we using our energy as efficiently as we can? And there is always talk about the energy subsidies and how can we create a balance and make incentives for businesses and for households to move towards energy efficiency. Thank you very much, Sada Rayan. Oh, sorry,
can I just add one last point? We're talking as well, as we're talking, we're an oil producing country, and I know there are so many attempts as well to use renewable energy, as my colleagues mentioned. But as well, something very new, and it's being studied and being tried with some industries, how we can use, how can we get energy from waste, so from industrial waste. So this is something is being slowly implemented in the country itself as well.
Yes, that's very interesting. And I would really encourage all the participants to check the energy section of the Tanfeed 2019 report and the waste to energy project. I was really glad to see that there was an improvement there, even though it was only 20% of the target. But waste energy are very complex projects, like all of you know, but it's good that there is at least some sort of improvement in that complex project as well. And you know, if we go back to the questions from the audience, it'd be good to hear the opinion, especially maybe we start with Ustad Saad again and Dr. Threya. What's your take on our policies related to climate change before and after COVID-19? And for Dr. Threya in particular, there is another question on the CO2 emissions. There is a question from Ms. Dr. Lamia Harib. What's the reason that we do not have a CO2 reduction target in Oman? So should we start first with Sada Saad and then Dr. Threya?
Sure. Well, speaking from a civil society point of view, we tend to work more on the grounds level rather than policy direction. So I would leave the comments related to policies to Dr. Threya. But the initiative that we've been trying to take as the Environment Society of Oman is kind of trying to build a future generation that is more conscious of the environment. And that is through initiatives in schools, where we have introduced a Green Schools program and tried to get the students to understand what does it mean to have an ecological footprint, you know, monitoring their own school grounds and trying to identify what are their issues related to energy, waste, or water, and what can they do within their own schools as well as their communities to improve this situation. On the college and university levels, we've also done this Green Innovation Ecothon to try to encourage innovation within college and universities related to renewables, as well as waste management, and really hoping that by building these mechanisms for a young generation to think more innovative, eventually they become your future ambassadors for dealing with this climate situation.
You're absolutely right.
Policies.
Yeah, it's humans first. Another follow-up question: is there any one story that stands out in your mind from this promotion of green, green way of thinking in schools or in the ecothon in the universities? Was any story that which one comes to your mind?
You know, to be honest, I think that all of the teams worked really hard, and several very interesting projects. You yourself were one of the mentors on the project, and it was just really great to see the initiative that they had taken and the fact that they really are thinking outside the box because they haven't been in the system, and it's very refreshing to see that.
Is there a place where the audience can see your work with the schools and the universities?
Yes, the best place would be directly through ESO's social media accounts, Environment Society of Oman. There's also the eso.org.om website. So those would be the best places to find us, really.
Thank you very much. A question to Dr. Threya. You know, there are many questions for you in the Q&A. But let's start with the questions that we already have on the policy before and after, on the CO2 emissions, and also there is a question about Oman's commitments to the Paris Agreement from Ms. Sadiqa Al-Lawati, and the same question about reducing carbon emissions from Ms. Hanan Al-Hakmani.
Thank you very much, Khalid, and thanks for all the questions. I know the climate change issue is very important, and lots of people still confusing about it and keep asking lots of questions about it, especially here in Oman. But before I go to the questions and I answer the questions, I want to say something. Many leaders around the world and scientists agree that renewable energy is one of the most smartest solution and effective investments that can make the packages of the economy after the pandemic. And it's the same for the climate change, because both crises demonstrated that there is a need to increase ambition and shift the world's energy supply towards renewables. But renewable energy is not the only smartest solutions. We have lots of green economy solutions and investments that can we all work together and to transit our environment into a more cleaner, more energy. Like we have smart cities, we have to have cities. We have to use the new technologies and the innovations in the agriculture and the fisheries. We have also the blue economy, which uses the ocean in a sustainable way. And at the same time, it's enhancing the national economy. For the policy related to climate change, as Amr mentioned at the beginning, Oman member in many international conventions related to the climate change, IPCC and the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement. And because of that, we have to follow the international agreements, and we have to submit our regular national reports. And in our second national report for the INDC, Oman, that we have, inshallah, we will reduce the carbon emission percent by 2020 until 2030. So we agreed on that, and we have to do so many incentives and investment solutions to target these targets. And also we have so many renewable energy projects here in Oman. I think around 7 for the government, and we have also for the private companies like BDO, as Engineer Ayman mentioned. Our role is to follow up all the renewable energies projects and to see the targets and the emissions, and to include this in our national report, which we have to submit it to the IPCC Secretariat to see if Oman is following the agreements or not, if we successfully target our at the end. And as you know, also in Oman 2040, the environment and sustainability is one of the main themes in Oman 2040. And one of the main targets under the environment and sustainability is the green economy, and also the renewable energy investments and solutions. So it's not just for the Ministry of Environment. To transit our economy to the green economy, we have to work all together: the government, the private sector, the NGO, the local community. We have to have policies which are parallel with the new situation, to reform policies, the regulations, and to have a national strategy which regulate the green economy projects, and also to regulate the other related investments in this issue.
Also, a question from the, yes, that was very clear. You mentioned the percentage, and also the conventions that Oman is party to, and there were follow-up questions from the audience on the same topic. Now that we have these, once we sign conventions, they become practically national law. So how does the government follow up adherence to those conventions? Does it follow implementation? Does it cooperate with other government entities to make sure the parties are these laws are enforced? Are there any incentives so that businesses move towards in this direction?
Yes, because when we signed any conventions, the Ministry of Environment, for example, in climate affairs, will be the national focal point. Maybe it's not responsible for all the solutions or all the processes related to the convention. So we have to cooperate and coordinate with all the concerned authorities to make sure that we are following the. Shall we stop for a while, or because it's?
Please carry on. If you can reduce the yes. Please go ahead.
Okay, so we have to make sure that we are in the right way, that we are following the target, and we are doing all the investment, all the processes and solutions to successfully reach that targets. And this happened in cooperation with the ministry, with all the other concerned authorities, because as Dr. Amr and mentioned, that the energy sector is under another entity, the Ministry of Environment responsible for following up the conventions. So we have to work all together. And other solutions and the other projects for it's not Ministry of Environment, it's with other entities or private companies. So we have to follow them to successfully targets they are looking for 2023 or 2030, and to submit the at the end we have to submit the national report, and this national report will calculate if we are successfully reach the targets or not, and also this will enhance the indicators and the Oman ranking in the environmental performance indicator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Threya. Follow-up question, are the previous reports publicly available?
Yes, with the if they can visit the website for the convention, all the reports are already there, downloaded. If you write Oman, all the reports which have been submitted from Oman, it's already downloaded. And also the ministry has finished preparation of the strategy, the climate change, the adaptation strategy for the climate change, and it's approved from the concerned authorities here in Oman, and it covered most of the adaptation solutions for the climate change.
Thank you very much, Dr. Threya, and I'm very glad that we have a panel that has this rich information that are related to environmental related issues, and I see that our audience also were asking a very important question. Have we reached a point, and this is from Mr. Muhammad Al-Rumhi, have we reached a point where it does make perfect economic sense for us to move toward renewable energy? So, he's looking for reassurance, Dr. Amar and perhaps all the other panelists, looking for reassurance. Are we, now that the conventional fossil fuel energy prices are lower, does it still make perfect sense for us to move in that direction? And also, I would like to thank Mr. Brian for his questions, and I hope Dr. Threya's clarifications also helped there. So this is an economic / environmental question.
If you allow me, Khalid, I can reply to this. Indeed, I mean, we need to understand also that the electricity sector, for example, it's under economic regulation. So any project will not be approved unless it sounds basically economic. And we have seen, of course, worldwide, the technology of renewables is become cheaper and cheaper. And it becomes really competitive even with the fossil fuel power plant. And that's specifically when we talk about utility level of projects that definitely can compete with the conventional power plant. So indeed, it is economic. It has been proven it's economic, and it can compete with the existing technology. But also in other, we need to understand there are some challenges with renewables. I mean, it is attractive from economic. It is attractive definitely from saving our environment, reducing the emission, and these. But that problem is latency issues with different technologies, especially like when we talk about solar PV, wind. It becomes really difficult to higher penetration of those renewables in the existing grid, because again there is a complication of operating electric grids. It requires more stable resources. It requires more renewable resources, and that's not the case with many of these technologies. There are, of course, other solar energy technologies that is more, I mean, easy to integrate to the grid. For example, like solar thermal project, where we could produce steam, and then that steam can run steam turbine, and then of course we can generate electricity with that technology. But again, then the cost becomes an issue. So and again, the problem is it will be available only during the daytime unless we introduce storage. And once we add storage to the formula, it becomes again a little bit, I mean, more expensive. So I mean, there's always, I mean, at the end of the day, technology keep improving and technologies keep changing. And what the price we have, which we have seen yesterday, maybe it's not the case for today. And that's the beautiful thing, and that's what we could see from the upcoming project in Oman. Some people, they are asking, shall we? Is it profitable? Is it economically sound to install, for example, like PV in my house? I'm gonna save in my electricity. The problem is the subsidy. The subsidy is really highly impacting, for example, integration of small-scale projects. Because with small-scale projects, I mean, the cost is really higher per kilowatt if you compare it with your utility scale, and that's something probably which require more attention probably with the policy from the government, where if there is probably more incentives for individuals to install, for example, those PVs in their rooftops, then it becomes more attractive, and it will be more economic, I would say, compared with the subsidy. Now, if the subsidy is removed and then it becomes more cost-effective tariff for probably all customers, then it becomes, of course, attractive from economic point of view. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you very much, and we really appreciate it. I mean, this is a great input from an expert, and you know, I think all of us realize how sensitive and how critical any decision that is related to subsidies, especially in the current global economic and social conditions as well. And we know the impact of lifting any subsidies that can have on the middle to lower income citizens and residents. But you know, we all realize that there are sometimes some brave decisions that take into account the longer vision that we might need to back all of us as a country. Thank you very much for your input, Dr. Amr.
If I may add, Sir Khalid,
yes,
if I may add just a point, indeed, as mentioned by Dr. Amr, and again,
could you also please, Ayman, we have a couple of more questions also for you, if you can just keep them and also comment on them. One question is, would you say that the projects that PDO did are only pilots, or are they really scalable projects? And if they are only pilot, when are do you think PDO will start with larger scale projects? Another question is with regards what investment opportunities are there, you know, that investors can look into in renewable energy? And the last question is, how committed PDOs to invest in renewable energy projects to meet the 30% target that Dr. Amr mentioned? I'm sorry, I know you thought you will only answer one question, then we added 3 more to you. I hope you will enjoy answering that.
No problem at all. So indeed, just complementing what Dr. Amr mentioned, the cost of renewable energy now, it's beating the hydrocarbon-based energy. But the intermittency, as mentioned by Dr. Amr, for the solar when it comes to the day and night, and the seasonality of the wind, that's something to be in consideration. And just to put numbers into let's say, the discussion, the renewable energy, talking about solar and wind, it varies between 25 to 35, let's say, $1 per megawatt hour, compared to 55 and 65 for the gas, let's say, turbines power. So it makes full sense, but every, let's say, network or every company or even country, they need to be careful in diversifying so that they are sure about the stability of the grid between the day and the night and throughout the season. So in terms of feasibility, the projects are so feasible. There is, let's say, so much scope, let's say, to put there. Now, looking into the, let's say, another point, let's say, to mention before answering my questions is the, as mentioned by Dr. Amr, in the domestic level, it might not be, let's say, viable now because of the subsidy, but AER, the authority, and whomever asked the question, he asked it at the right time, that there is SAHM program now where someone can apply, let's say, for that installation, would incentivize, let's say, that installation for the person. So it will be just a contribution by them. And thanks to AER, let's say, to bring up this innovative, let's say, initiative. For the pilot and large, let's say, for PDO, definitely we look into upscaling all our projects. And there are some technologies like the solar PV that we didn't have even to go for a pilot for because it is already proven, let's say, around the world. So immediately we went to a mass scale of 100 megawatt. Now, just to put into the perspective, the 100 megawatt project we have commissioned last month, it can, let's say, feed power for 15,000 homes. So just to give you the scale of how big it is. So definitely we are committed, let's say, as a company to bring the projects into a scalability that is really useful for the company. Some new technologies, yes, we take it into a pilot, either because it's not feasible, like the hydrogen now, but we want, let's say, to be ready when the technology will be feasible. We know all the aspects about the climatic elements of Oman, while others of them, they might be new to the region and let's say they have not been tested. So we are looking at them. Some of them, they are in the R&D. That's why it's natural to go for a pilot, let's say, project. In terms of investment opportunities, as much as they are there in PDO, they are the same, let's say, in the government. As I mentioned, the energy efficiency, it's really like a wide topic that many companies, they can contribute there. Along with, let's say, although the subsidy is high and so on, yet there is so much scope that can be done within a household or within an organization, from energy auditing, from energy conservation, let's say, either hard barrier or behavioral elements, let's say, that can be sent, let's say, across a company or even someone at home, for example. So there are like huge business opportunities there, and the reduction in the consumption by either a person or a company, it would give its merits, let's say, and it will help definitely the government as well. The last question, I couldn't note it down, Mr. Khalid. On how committed PDO, sorry. Yes, definitely PDO is committed, let's say, to meet that target. And let's say achieving such targets, it might not be really difficult, but rather looking at it from an investment point of view. Now, with the COVID-19, with even let's say, the economic situation in the region, let's say, yet we could see that major projects like the Ibri project mentioned by Dr. Amr, it reached very competitive, let's say, elements there because of the trust of the international investors in Oman. And let's say we are committed, let's say, in PDO to achieve our target. There is a full, let's say, department for renewable energy. We do have the means, let's say, we know that we have the resources from the natural, let's say, resources from the solar and the wind, as well as the knowledge and the know-how. You're on mute again, Mr. Khalid.
Thank you very much, and I hope Ms. Amal, Ibtihaj, Mr. Brian, this answers your question, and Dr. Lamia as well. And there was a question also, I would like to know your opinion, Stada Rayan. You mentioned that you do lots of reporting for your clients. Do we have in Oman here any regular annual audit from the government that monitors the same points that you audit in your reports? For example, waste, pollution, emissions. Do we require companies to report on those?
Yes, by law, we work actually as a third party. So we do as an independent consultant, we go and do the measurements, even if the industries themselves have their own instrumentations. We go and measure, and we prepare environmental performance reports. And these reports go to the Ministry of Environment. And then the Ministry of Environment, is based on their decision, they can go and check on the results of the reports themselves, and they can go and check at the industries themselves. Those environmental performance reports depend on the size and type of the industry. Some of them, most of them are on a quarterly basis. Some of them are on a monthly. Some of them only, if it is a small business, it's only you have to do it once a year. That's for the environmental performance reporting. And recently, many big organizations were asked by the Ministry of Environment and Climate Affairs to prepare a separate climate report, where these organizations have to calculate their greenhouse gases emissions. And you can compare that their emissions throughout the years. So what are the improvements? What are the energy audits, carbon sinks as well, which is very important in the long term, because as Ayman has mentioned, the carbon footprint and the carbon credits have started, they have value actually, where you can, countries where they have high greenhouse gases emissions, they have to pay penalties and or buy credits from the countries that they have lower greenhouse gases emissions. So these are the important economical impacts in the country itself. And I think with the current pandemic, this is a great opportunity. Let's say that we always hear during this pandemic, we need to do self-reflection. And I think the self-reflection is needed for the industries themselves. How can we improve if we're an existing business? How can we improve our emissions to the environment itself? How can we improve our operation in order to have lower greenhouse gases emissions in the long run? And as well, it helped us, I think this current pandemic helped us to explain to the different organizations what are the economical and social benefits when we try to be greener and more environmental friendly. Because if you are emitting more to the environment, you expect to pay more fines, for example. So that's an economical impact. You will create a negative impact on the health of your employees and the community around you. So you'll have more sick people that will create more burden into the government itself and the hospitals themselves. You pay more medical insurance and so on. So in overall, taking care of the environment, we need the sustainable development. We need the industries to create jobs, to have a better life standard. But as well, we have to take a pause, especially at this time when things got slower, and to reevaluate what can we do in order to have a better performance, environmental performance over there.
Thank you so much. I could not have dreamed of a better message for our audience today. And I hope this answers your question, Ms. Suhaila, and also Mr. Abdullah Shriqi. And I think this has been, we could go on and talk more, but I hope this will spark interest in our audience to pursue, to explore, and to check all the resources that the panelists mentioned today. And I think in the final few minutes, some of the audience want us to give them final message on what is your opinion are the most important opportunities. Like Ms. Rayan just mentioned, if we reflect because of everything that happened over the past 3 months, what should be our priority now in terms of opportunity that we need people to pursue? And this could be our final message for today. And this was a question also from Mr. Ahmed al-Maqbali, who wants to know what opportunities are there, whether they are for jobs or for SMEs or for us as a community. So what would be a final message on opportunities? And we can start with you, Ustadha Suad.
Sure, thank you. I think that, as Rayan has hit on some very important points, the fact that we're in this situation, we have gone into a lockdown and intermittently reduced our greenhouse gas emissions. Now, as we move towards opening up the economy, how can we kind of keep these improvements for the future? I think an important message when looking at the economic side of things is that let's not have a short-term vision. Let's not end up in another pandemic type scenario. Might not be a health pandemic, might be some type of environmental disaster as a result of climate change. Let's not wait for that to happen. Let's act now, prepare ourselves so that we have a more resilient future for the economy, for human health, and for nature.
Thank you so much. Totally agree with you. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Thraya?
Thank you very much, Khalid. I think COVID-19 is a wake-up call for us. And it shows that it is possible to make any transformational changes overnight. Although so many progress efforts have been done globally and here also in Oman for tackling climate change and conserving the environment, but we have to work more harder, and we have to think to change our thinking to go more green. It's not just for the conservation of the environment, but the green economy, it's for the human, it's for the local communities, it's for the economy. So we have to work all together, the government, the private, the communities, the NGOs, to change our economy, to preserve our environment. And this all, alhamdulillah, happened, and we can see it in Vision 2040. And really, we are looking forward for Vision 2040, because everything we are discussing now and every changes we are looking for, it's really in 2040. So we have to work hard to reach the targets that we are looking for in 2030 and 2040 for the environment and the economy in Oman, inshallah.
Shukran. Thank you so much, Dr. Amar.
Thank you, Khalid. I would just like focus a little bit in the R&D part. I think in Oman, we do have our own challenges. That's probably not the case in somewhere else in the world. It is a message that I would like to spread, that investment and enforcement of research and development in the field of related to energy becomes very important to achieve our goals. And I think as Dr. Thuraya mentioned, Vision 2040 has a focus on this area as well, and we look forward to see more improvement in that area.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amar. Bishmandas?
So adding to what the panelists have mentioned, indeed, I mean, because of COVID-19, we could see the effect, let's say, on the environment. We could see wild animals, let's say, going back, let's say, to their kind of homeland in the sense. So this is a wake-up call, as mentioned by Dr. Thuraya, that everyone really needs to act on. I would urge everyone and every organization, let's say, and possibly even every nation, eventually to bring any possible target to be brought forward. If a renewable energy target is there, let's see if we can accelerate it. And I will also focus on the jobs creation, because that's kind of a national priority now. And moving to a green economy, it's really, really important, so that ecosystem throughout, let's say, investment and job creation will be really made. And Oman is well positioned to lead into this sphere. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Sadr Ayan?
I think we need to focus into three sectors, especially for the SMEs. This is a message. We need to focus in food sector, in the medical sector, and energy, because these are the three critical ones. And as we learned from this pandemic, that there is a huge opportunities for small businesses, like the small farms and the fisheries. And things are getting easier with time. This is a lesson that we learned, that we can buy things online. This is something not common here in Oman, but things have accelerated. Education as well. This is something that we need to invest with the e-learning, how to improve the e-learning in Oman. We don't know for how long this will last, but we need to improve the e-learning platform. And we've seen as well excellent examples in the medical sector, where for example, hand sanitizers and face shields were manufactured here in Oman. And as we know, local products have lower carbon footprint.
Thank you so much. This has been a very, very enriching, and I've seen a lot of messages from the participants, from the audience, thanking you all for your insightful discussions. And there is an idea. Ms. Siddiqa Al-Lawati is proposing a platform that is related to climate change issues, and perhaps this is something the ministry and we have civil society here, and PDO and Dr. Amar Center for SQ Center for Sustainable Energy could be the nucleus of a platform which reports on the different initiatives and efforts by the Omani entities to reduce carbon emissions, for example. So this has been very insightful. Just to summarize everything that my very interesting guests have said, we have learned from Ms. Rayan that we need to focus on the vital sectors that, after reflection over the past 2 to 3 months, we have rediscovered their importance and their salience to our existence as a planet, especially medical, environmental, food. Thank you very much. And we've also seen how reporting is going on in Oman, and that it is very important for corporates to pay more attention and to move more towards being more transparent and reporting on their environmental performance. Thank you very much, Ustad Rayyan. And we've seen also with Bashmuhandis Ayman how many efforts at various levels, not only at the pilot level, but also at big projects level, to leverage everything we have to move towards achieving our goals that are related to renewable energy. And he posed very important questions that we whether from the business side, this is the time to decide that we also, it's in our best interest to have the infrastructure so that this sector flourishes. And it is no longer, we no longer have the luxury of wondering whether this is feasible or not. We think now it has been proven that it is feasible. So hopefully we will move towards investing in the infrastructure that is commensurate to flourishing renewable energy sector. Shukran, Bashmuhandis Ayman, and good luck with the program as well.
Thank you so much.
And we've learned so much, as usual, from Dr. Amr, who hasn't aged since I met him in the US many years ago. You're always a wealth of knowledge, and I think the center should be one of the most centers now in Oman, because we were one of the first countries in the world to pay attention to the environment and establish a ministry for it. And your center should play a very important role in supporting everyone else's efforts in making everything that is important to the audience, whether it's the reporting, whether it is to just making information available, or piloting, or projects, or learning from all the initiatives that you mentioned related to the energy field, such as Saham or Yasir or the other initiatives as well. So we really look forward to seeing the good efforts of the center everywhere, Dr. Amr. Shukran jazilan.
You're welcome, Khalid.
Colleague and a friend, Dr. Threya, thank you so much. We have learned a lot today that the commitments from the government are there. The agreements are signed and deposited. The ministry is following up, and the information is available for people who are interested. And we've seen the interest from people, but it takes a village and everyone's efforts. And I love that you said, I think it should be the main message of this session. This pandemic is a wake-up call for all of us to start action. And hopefully the ministry will always take a leading role from the policy side in that. Shukran jazilan, Victoria.
Thank you so much. It's really my pleasure, and I learned a lot from this session. Thank you, Khalid, and thank you, Itra.
Shukran, Doctora. And we've learned also from Ustadha Saad that the civil society has been very active, and especially focusing on the most important factor on the formula of that through which we will achieve sustainability, which is human beings. If we instill in our youngsters in schools, if we instill in the communities, if we instill in our students in universities how they can leverage all of these opportunities, everything else will become easier. We've always needed to look at the humans first. So thank you very much for reminding us of that, Ustadha Saad.
Thank you, Khalid, and thank you, Ithra, for organizing this event, and to the panelists, of course.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. And as we started with you, we will end also with you. You have said, most of you, that you expect to see mix from business as usual and a clean and a circular and lean economy or click economy. It is totally up to us. How are we going to conduct ourselves after the pandemic? So you are part of the answer and part of the solution. And I hope we change the opinion of the one person who said that we will go back to business as usual. So thank you very much to all participants for taking your time of your valuable schedule to be with us today. Shukran jazilan jami'an wa jazakum Allah khair. And for following up, we hope that you will follow Ithra's social media. You will find a summary of today's session, and in few weeks you will also see a full report about the session and the input from the panelists. And I would encourage you to visit the websites and the social media handles of all the organizations that are represented today: Environment Society of Oman, MECA, and also I hope you're also on social media, the Sustainable Energy Research Center, Dr. Amar.
There is a website also,
Yes.
which is asq.edu.om/circ.
/circ. Thank you for making it easy for us. So I would encourage the participant to visit the center's website as well. And PDO is handle also always focuses on their sustainability efforts. And Mazoon also, if you could follow them, I think you will be able to keep the conversation going. Sorry, just to check if there are any final comments from the Mr. Osama sees that this is seems good effort, and I think we have all of us talked about how everything that we said today enhances human being well-being post-pandemic, inshallah. So hopefully in the transcript and in the summary, you will see that, Osama, in details. Thank you very much, Mr. Brian, also for your kind comments. Thank you, everyone, and hopefully we'll meet again in another enriching and exciting session. شكرا جزيلا. مع السلامة.
مع السلامة. مع السلامة. شكرا.
شكرا. السلام عليكم. شكرا.
شكرا. مع السلامة.